I can like basically get this entire picture tattooed on my body because of how much I love this book. I was planning a different video this week, but then I realized कि ये महीना तो women authors के लिए है. Women authors नहीं, मतलब women in translation, जिन authors ने basically अपने लैंग्वेज में इतनी सुंदर कहानियाँ लिखी है जिनको फिर इंग्लिश में हमें ट्रांसलेट करके मिला है, तभी जाकर हम उनको पढ़ पाए हैं. सो आई थॉट ओके, द वीडियो दैट आई एम प्लानिंग एट दिस मोमेंट कैन वेट, but this one video is very important because I want you all to read at least one of the books from this entire stack, and you are going to be very grateful to me after at least you pick one from this list. It's August, and while the country is kind of busy preparing themselves for the celebratory factor of August, which is the Independence Day, we are turning pages that explore personal liberation. In today's video, we have 10 amazing books written by women in their own respective native languages, which we fortunately are eligible to read in English because of the great translators. And that is the major reason why we celebrate women in translation. Now, in this title, it is essential that we read books written by women in their native language, and then it kind of gets translated in the English. And obviously we are reading books in English, at least we, as in like I read books in English. So when they're written in their native language and then they get translated and they reach out to audiences like me, I feel privileged, and I feel that it's a very celebratory factor. And this is also one way of giving an ode to the translators who does amazing job to bring books from all kinds of languages and from all across the globe at your own comfort language in the most easiest and efficient way possible. And that's why I decided to share my top 10. So yeah, so today's video we have 10 amazing books, and I can't wait to share with you all the books that I personally love. Hi guys, this is Simran. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, hi, I make book related videos. If you know by the channel, and if you have been with me since day one, I am extremely grateful to you. You know how much I love you. So if you love me, subscribe to my channel. That's the only thing that I need from you all. And share it with your fellow friends and family who loves reading or who keeps interest in buying or reading books. And yeah, I think that would be enough for today as an intro, because I know I can be tedious at times for a lot of people who think or feel that I have long introductions. So yeah, for now that would do, because we have a lot to talk anyway. So without any further ado, let's move into the video. I have my laptop here. I have written down all the things that I want to mention about each one of the books, so that is there. So today's video is going to be a little interesting because I'm going to try to summarize the entire book in one single sentence so that it is easier for you to just watch the video in a spree, and also easier for me to not talk about the book in length, because if I keep talking about 10 books like in elaborative manner, this video is going to be longer than a movie maybe. So we will not do that. I don't want you people to get bored from all the talks that I do. So keeping that in mind, the first book that I would like to recommend you with just one line is Minor Detail by Alania Shibley. This book basically begins with a single act of violence buried in silence, and decades later a woman kind of risks everything to unravel its truth. This book is the winner of English Pen Award, and a very prestigious award in itself. So yeah, short, but what an intense slap to your face. I love this book. I love this book. I remember reading it and rating it a 5-star. The next book is Kim Jiyoung, born 1982, by Chunam Ju. I am hoping that I am pronouncing the name of the author correctly. If not, then I'm really sorry. So this book is basically about an ordinary woman who is doing everything right, but still it's never enough. So this woman could be you, could be me, could be anybody, could be any woman in general. So it is very relatable. Okay, there were parts that kind of made me nauseous because it was so creepy and uncomfortable to read at some point. So yeah, this one book I really highly recommend. If you haven't already read this one, please do this month, because this month definitely needs a lot of women in translation work, and this could be one of the very important reads that you could pick this year. I mean this month. Yeah. The third one is by one of my most favorite authors of all time. I have been reading her since the day I kind of discovered that books can be so interesting, and one of her books is the reason that I'm a reader today. Also the fact that I was left speechless on figuring out or discovering the fact that she, being an Indian, wrote in an Italian language first and then got it translated, because I have always had the privilege of reading her in English. So when I read In Other Words by Jhumpa Lahiri, like, I was taken by surprise because of the fact that this book was originally written in Italian language, if I'm not wrong, and then it got translated. So I was surprised to see that she mastered in that language, and she wrote it so well in Italian language, that the translation did not even feel like fragmented in any way. It was a complete whole beautiful piece that brought together to this book, and I really admire the translation of this book. So this book basically hits home, because what do you do when your mother tongue feels no longer like home? You find another. Lahiri writes her way into a new language and her new identity. The next one is a bold take on feminism, and it also is one of the books that was written when feminism was not even a thing. And despite the fact that the book is quite short, I think it is not short. I mean, it is everything but short, because it took me a good number of days to complete the book, despite the size of the book or the number of the pages, because it's quite heavy between the lines, and the subject in itself is so intense and it needs a lot of study. Basically, at least it took me a lot of time and a lot of research to understand the book completely. Not that it's complicated, it's just I was not aware of the subject in such deeper level. I just knew what feminism meant on the surface level. This book kind of gives you a dense, deeper knowledge about feminism, and takes women to a level higher in this on the scale bar, or in general. So the book is The Second Sex by Simone de Beauvoir. I'm hoping that I'm pronouncing the name right. Now, this is not the original book. This is the extract version of this book, The Second Sex. This is like the shorter version. So if you want to dive into Simone de Beauvoir's writing, maybe because it is written originally in French, if I'm not wrong. And surprisingly, it is also translated into 40 languages and has become a landmark in the history of feminism. So it looks small, obviously, but you might not end up reading it on a spree, because it deserves a lot of attention. At least it did for me. Maybe I was back then not quite into all of these subjects, maybe because of that one reason. But again, if you're reading this book, make sure that you have a very open, thoughtful mind, or maybe you have a very broad perspective on this subject. Otherwise, you're going to basically throw this out of the window, especially if you're a man. So you might not be able to process and take a lot of things from this book, because there could be some things that are quite triggering, and I will understand if that happens with you. But even then, I insist that you read this book. This is a very good one, because Simone de Beauvoir writes quite densely and intensely and manipulatively at moments. I suggest that you start with the extract version rather than diving into the bigger version of the book, because that could be quite overwhelming, at least from what I read and at least from what I believe. The next one is again about woman, written by a woman, obviously, because we're talking about all the women authors. And I feel women written by women are the most beautiful thing, because we understand the opposite gender quite lesser than we understand the identical gender better. So what happens when a woman refuses to eat meat, refuses to marriage, refuses to obedience, and basically refuses everything? Vegetarian by Hangkang is strange, haunting, and deeply human. This book basically understands the quiet, aching rebellion that lives in every woman. And I think there's nobody who does not know about this book, because it has won the Nobel Prize, if I'm not wrong. So yeah, if you haven't already picked this book, you should. The next one is my most favorite books of all time, like one of the most favorite books. So if you ever come and ask me, Simran, give me your top 5s or top 3, maybe this book is still going to be there. Even if you ask me, Simran, give me your top 2s, I think this is one of the books that's going to be in the top 2s. The book is so eccentric and unforgettable that I am so glad that I read this, or I picked this, despite the fact that I DNF'd it in the first place for the first time when I read it, and then I picked it once I was in the mood of reading it. And I'm so glad I did not DNF it altogether, because I would have missed a gem of a literature, a gem of a book, a gem of an author. And the book that I'm talking about is Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead by Olga Tokarczuk. I have only read one book by this author, and it is basically translated from Polish to English, if I'm not wrong. I think this is one book that you should be definitely reading this winters. If not this month, please pick this book during winters because it is extremely atmospheric. It is everything that you need, everything. And if you're an animal lover, you definitely gotta read this one. So basically in this book, when animals begins to die and no one listens to her, she makes sure that she is being heard. Okay, like the protagonist, whose name is Janina. Yes, I love this eccentric woman. I love this author. I love everything about this book. The twist at the end will keep you, blown. Like, I was completely shook. I was so numb that I did not even have a legit reaction that the book deserved, because I was so shocked. I was extremely numb when the twist kind of came during the climax of the book. I love this book. Okay, the more I talk about this book, the more I fall in love with the book, and I cannot insist on everybody to kind of read this book this winters, because I think this book fits absolutely amazingly during Halloween and stuff, because the book is extremely atmospheric. So when it's all wintry here and the world outside is freezing, you gotta read this one because it gives you all the feels without any fail. The next one is basically a one that I have repeatedly mentioned, and I could not stop myself from even mentioning it in this list because it is one of the books that crawls under your skin. Very wittily written and quite disturbing, I would say, and a book that basically lingers with you long after you're done reading the book, because I have read this book a long time ago. I think I read this book last year during winters, and since then I have never stopped talking about this book, because every time I want to recommend books, this is one book that would peek from the corner of my shelf saying, "Hi, I'm there, can you please talk about me more?" And that is how I keep talking about this book endlessly, almost on all my videos, and this time as well. And the book is Nails and Eyes by Kaori Fujino. By now you must be tired कि सिमरन क्यों हमेशा खाली एक ही book recommend कर रही हो. But trust me, if you love Japanese novels and you want to read something that did not lose its essence even after getting translated, I think especially by a women author, I think Nails and Eyes by Kaori Fujino does that job very nicely, considering it's very eerie, very creepy, very disturbing, and it has a lot of mystical elements in it. I won't say it's fantasy, but there were a lot of points or a lot of parts where I was like, is it even humanly possible? I mean, so I hope I make sense. If you still want to know more about this book, go to my other videos and check. You will find this book somewhere in the other videos, and you will know why I want to recommend this book more. But this video is about one-liners, although I'm failing at it miserably. But yeah, let's move on. The next one is my latest favorite. Now, if you have been following me for the longest, you already know which book I'm here to talk about next. But again, if you're a vegetarian fan, like vegetarian, I mean, by vegetarian, this is the book that I mean. If you have loved this book, if you have read this book immensely, if you have appreciated, acknowledged, or tattooed this book here, I think you cannot 100% miss on this Korean cult classic, which is translated by Soje. And I recently read this. I received it as a PR, but trust me, this is not a paid collaboration. The more I talk about the book, the lesser it is. I want to keep talking about this book endlessly. This is so good. It's majorly about poverty that we kind of come to know at the end of the book, because from every page that I was reading initially, it felt more like cannibalism, although it has elements of cannibalism. So if you are somebody who's not very comfortable about that subject altogether, I think you can skip that part, but do not skip this book, because it is so good. Okay, I don't want you to skip irrespective of anything. So it is basically about poverty and about shame, about the love that stays afloat in a world where the entire world is kind of trying to push the love aside, and basically a trauma of sustaining in a world full of inflation, but in a most beautiful and poetic way. I mean, I love this book. I can basically get this entire picture tattooed on my body because of how much I love this book. So if you trust me with recommendations, please read this book. Okay, the ninth one is basically about a woman again, obviously. Now this book is basically about a woman abandoned by her husband, and how her husband kind of leaves behind her despite the fact that they have children together, and he doesn't want to stay with her because he has apparently fallen in love with some younger girl, and how she goes through the phase of it, like how she, you know, kind of collects all the pieces that her husband have scattered behind, leaving behind her in the wake of the abandonment, and how she kind of basically accumulates all the scattered pieces of her and tries to work through it alone. And that is the reason I love this book, because it teaches you a lot about living alone and how painful it can be for a lot of people, especially women who are mostly dependent. The human nature of longing, the emotional delirium, and you know, the tragedy behind somebody leaving you, and you know what goes through you when you are so attached to somebody and the person kind of suddenly comes up to you and says, भाई मेरे को अब तुम्हारे साथ नहीं रहना, मुझे कोई और पसंद है. Imagine that feeling. I mean, it's so sad to even think of, and how she goes through all of these things with her children being by her side, and children very chote. The book is very sad, so if you're somebody who loves reading sad books, this one book, The Days of Abandonment by Elena Ferrante, also one of the only books of hers that I kind of read. And I think after this one book, I am somebody who would want to read her, like all her works basically, because how genius of her to write something like this. I love this book. Quite a rage this book is, and it will definitely make you angry if you're a woman and you're reading this book. It did not feel like I was reading a fictional story. It was as if, you know, I was into Olga's house. Olga is the protagonist, and it was as if I was into Olga's place and I was one of the children's, maybe, or at least somebody in the book's scenario, and I was watching her silently, quietly through the window, and how she was dealing with her life basically. I mean, it's very sad. Okay, it's sad, powerful, and a must read. So you can also consider picking this one. I love this book. Yes. The last one is finally by an Indian author. I was lucky enough to read this book when the hype was all down, because at one point everybody was reading this book, everybody was talking about this book, and I didn't want to jump into the bandwagon of reading this book altogether when everybody else was doing it. So I read this book later, and I found out why were everybody actually talking about this book. So जब मैंने ये बुक पढ़ी, मुझे इतना अच्छा लगा, because this is so different of a book. Maximum of the time what Indian authors writes are about partition, about independence, or about immigration and stuff like that, but this is very different from all the, you know, little elements or the common elements that we read written by an Indian author. And the book that I'm talking about is Kabar by K.R. Meera, which is originally written in Malayalam, and it was later translated from Malayalam by Nisha Susan, if that is how the translator's name is pronounced, and she did an amazing job. Okay, so this book is basically about a female judge with a haunted past that takes land dispute and is forced to basically confront with the buried history, the caste, the violence. I remember loving this book so much when I first read. I think I read it this year itself, but I did not get a lot of chance to talk about this book. So if you take my considerations again, this one book could be your go this month. So yeah, with this we come to the end of the video. If you enjoyed this video, I mean, enjoy तो क्या ही करोगे, अगर आपको अच्छा लगा है थोड़ा सा भी, और अगर आपको अच्छा लगता है कि मैं यहाँ पे आके थोड़ा सा बात करूँ बुक्स के बारे में या किसी भी और सब्जेक्ट के बारे में, put it down in the comments. And if you like me talking about books and books, then consider subscribing to my channel, liking this video, and sharing it with your friends and family, because I think these kind of recommendation videos are your favorites from what I can see on my channel. If you want any kind of recommendations, or if you want me to read any kind of specific book, you may also mention that in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, bye bye.